Tell me, Alex, how you came up with the idea for the Great Muslim American Road Trip. How long ago? What made it pop into your head?
Yeah, well, um, I've traveled all across the country in the course of my work, and one of the things I found that were very surprising to me that there are Muslim communities everywhere. We think of Muslims being in some of the coastal cities or Detroit, but even in very small places, we find big Muslim communities. So the idea initially was, hey, let's take a road trip to visit some of these communities and learn about the American Muslim story. But the question was, where would we go, right? And initially, I thought, well, I got a map and I started saying, well, here's a community here and here's a community there, and I was going up and down. When I was done, and I put it into uh, a map app, it turned out to be a 12,000-mile journey. So that wasn't going to work. Then it just sort of hit me. Route 66, the most iconic American route there is. Is there a Muslim story on Route 66? And in fact, there's a very big and profound story that goes back even all the way to just a few years after Columbus discovered America. So that's how the idea came together.
It made itself once you
Yes,
discovered some of those stories.
that's right. That's right.
And how did you find you found a lot of interesting people and a lot of interesting places? That must have taken a lot of time, a lot of research.
Well, one of the things that people don't, when they think of movie making, they think of lights, camera, action. They think being out there and the camera moving and the director yelling cut and all that stuff. That actually is the least part of a movie making process. Most of the time is spent in pre-production, in preparation. Figuring out where you're going, figuring out who you're meeting, figuring out how you're going to get to the logistics. Simple things like, in our case, we were in some very remote areas. Well, how do we feed everybody when we're in this remote area? Where do we get the food? All that stuff. That takes an enormous amount of planning for it to come off well. That was probably a year, if not even a bit more than a year.
Before you ever even turned on a camera.
Before we even turned on the camera. The cameras are turned on for altogether 18 days. So it was a year of prep, about 18 days of actually shooting and filming. And then it was another 6, 7 months of post-production when you're taking all that footage and you're trying to assemble it into a film that is coherent, makes sense. Then you're adding music and you're adding special effects and you're doing all that stuff. So
you had a 3-hour program. How much film did you have, or how much did you have to
well, we
cut?
had altogether, we had 9 cameras on this film. We had cameras set up in the car. We had our own cameras that we set at different places. We had 2 drones that were filming the car as it was moving different places, getting landscapes. So we had an enormous amount of footage, probably, I want to say 60 or 70 hours worth of footage, which by itself was a chore. I mean, the first almost 2 months of the project was just going through all that footage and identifying it and categorizing it so we knew where to start pulling from as we start putting it together.